Olympic champion Svetlana Zhurova criticized the judging of the men's figure skating competition at the 2026 Milan Games. She believes they deliberately downgraded Russian figure skater Petr Gumennik. The men's figure skating competition has concluded at the 2026 Olympic Games in Milan and Cortina d'Ampezzo. Russian figure skater Petr Gumennik, competing as an individual neutral, finished 6th overall, scoring 271.21 points in his two programs. After the short program, the 23-year-old St. Petersburg native was only 12th with 86.72 points. However, in the free skate, he delivered one of the most challenging performances of the competition, executing a clean fall-free performance and his signature triple axel. Gumennik's fourth-place finish in the free skate, 184.49 points, allowed him to move up in the final standings. Despite this, the Russian only finished 6th, less than 4 points behind the bronze medalist. Olympic speed skating champion and State Duma deputy Svetlana Zhurova, in a comment to RB Sport, accused the judges of biased treatment of Gumennik. According to her, the Russian athlete was judged significantly more harshly than the other competitors, and this was no coincidence. Gumennik was judged more harshly than the others. This was predictable. The goal was to keep him off the podium. For as long as I can remember, our skaters have always been told that only a clean skate would save them, because they would be judged more harshly than the others and punished more harshly for mistakes, Zhurova emphasized. Indeed, the judging panel sent most of Gumennik's key elements back for review in the free skate. As a result, his technical score was reduced from the expected 114 to 103 points. Zhurova pointed out that similar incidents happen to Russian athletes all the time. This has happened at every Olympics. There are countless examples. It's tiresome to list them all. This time is no exception. Too many elements were sent back for review. If the judging had been fair and honest, Gumennik could have been in the top 3, even won silver, because the short program was also controversial, RB Sport quotes her as saying. The Russian Figure Skating Federation has already supported Petr, calling his performance a proud achievement and a performance that needs to be re-examined. Meanwhile, a sports lawyer stated that the Russian side could have appealed the results if it had taken the initiative in time. Yana Rakovskaya, Evgeny Plushenko's wife and head of the Angels Plushenko Academy, called the evaluation of Gumennik's performance at the Olympics unfair and compared the situation to her husband's stripping of his gold medal at the 2010 Games. "Friends, I'm very upset. I lost. I won't drink champagne for Milan's victory, whom I bet on without even thinking, nor for Petr's bronze. I'm most upset for Petr Gumennik. He's such a great skater. He skated a clean free program with 6 ultra C jumps and 5 quads, his only clean performance, apart from the Olympic champion. They docked 10 points from his technique, and he lost to third place by just 3 points, Rakovskaya noted. Just as Evgeny said, they wouldn't give it to him, but he'd finish 6th. They didn't give it to him. They didn't give it to him, but he did everything he could, cleanly, with skill. A humble guy from St. Petersburg. My heart bleeds, just like my husband Evgeny Plushenko was robbed of his gold medal in Vancouver in 2010 by just over a point, and Petr was robbed of his bronze by 3 points. Alas, nothing has changed. Rakovskaya wrote. Arina Kudlai. I'm very happy for the new Olympic champion, Misha Shadorov. He's a great guy. I'm glad everything worked out for him. Of course, I was worried about Petr Gumennik. I even shed tears of happiness at the end for him, for pulling himself together, doing everything, showing what we can do, and we are doing it. We need to be showcased and invited onto the international stage. This level of clean skating was seen not only in Russia but also around the world. I was really worried for him, and I'm glad that he finally succeeded at such an important competition, under such pressure. I was worried about Ilya Malinin, mixed emotions. It's not like him at all. But that's sport, anything can happen. He shouldn't be blamed. Skating 4 Olympic programs is truly difficult. He's still young, and he could have many more Olympics ahead of him. Everything is ahead of him, and he'll succeed, Kudlai said. The Russian Figure Skating Federation, like all our fans, thanks Petr Gumennik for his perseverance and professional performance at the Olympics. In sport, it's important to analyze results very carefully and draw the right conclusions for future work. So, speaking of Petr's free skate performance, in figure skating there are 2 scores, technical and components. Everyone understands that the technical score is absolutely crucial. Petr placed second in the free skate technical score, just behind the Olympic champion. This is incredibly significant. Yes, our skater lost in the component score, but this score is earned, in part because athletes regularly perform in front of judges at international competitions. Despite the fact that our skaters have been completely banned from international competition for 4 years, Petyu's sixth place at the Olympics is the best result for Russian men's single skaters since 2010. We are proud of Petyu's performance. In the circumstances, under the conditions we've been experiencing together for the past 4 years, his professionalism and courage are astounding. We wholeheartedly congratulate Petya, his family, his coaches, his team, and all our fans on his outstanding performance in men's single skating at the Milan Games. And I am confident that over the next 4 years, Petya and the other members of our national team will gain even more strength, and by the 2030 Olympic Games, we will have a competitive team that will compete for the highest Olympic places, said Sakaralids. The figure skating elite is often mired in controversy, but not this time. Gumennik finished sixth in Milan. He skated a very difficult program with 5 quadruple jumps flawlessly, but still came within 3 points of a medal. Although, for example, Japan's Yuma Kajiyama wrecked his performance and still took silver. Figure skating is a very subjective sport, but even here, it's clear, Petya was underestimated. And while the lower technical score is acceptable, the paltry bonuses and component scores worse than Malinen's, who had no performance at all, are certainly debatable. Elena Radionova, it's clear that we hadn't been on the international scene for several years and were a bit short in the world rankings. 3.5 points from 6th to 3rd place is just a minimal gap, and, let's say, Petya was judged quite harshly. I think Petya should have definitely been in the top 3, because he was one of the few who performed 5 quadruple jumps, incredibly difficult content. He and Misha Shadorov performed 2 clean routines, so for me, Petya should definitely be in the top 3. Honored coach of Russia Alexander Julin. The judges underscored him. They put everything on review, even though all the jumps were fully rotated. They lowered his first score slightly, and the second was too low for such a program. If we hadn't missed any points these past 4 years, Petya would definitely have been second. Elena Tchaikovskaya believes the judges were confused. The judges gave Petya absolutely no points. He was first in his performance, his aristocracy, the breadth of his skating, and the expression of his character. He did all the jumps, skated superbly, but a terrible incident occurred. The judges weren't prepared for Gumennik. They simply didn't know him. They hadn't seen him for 4 years, hadn't heard of him, hadn't worked with him. That's why it turned out the way it did. The judges had nothing to do with it. They simply didn't know what to do with him. Ilya Averbik, who choreographed that very same Onegin, called the judging unfair. Given such an unexpected rockfall that the leading trio experienced, and given such atrocious skating by the leaders, Petr should have been in the top 3 today, if the judging had been fair. So, of course, we're happy for his clean performance, but it's also sad, because objectively, Petr should have taken at least bronze today in the overall score. Alexei Mishin. Gumennik performed brilliantly. Petr showed a lifetime performance. I agree that he received low scores from the judges. Irina and Nina didn't see anything new. Why are we always looking for some kind of catch? Do we want them to feel sorry for us? To show how much they don't like us? Yes, they don't like us, but at the Olympics, the judges are fairly fair. And we're rummaging through the laundry basket. Alexander Lakarnik, honorary vice president of the International Skating Union, ISU, who is also a judge, defends his colleagues. It's difficult to answer the question of whether the judges underestimated Gumennik, because the judges, the jury, and the technical panel evaluate the components. And this panel is watching their own camera, not a television camera. There are many factors at play here, and I think the judging was objective. And to talk about whether the scores could have been higher is simply unrealistic in this judging system. Alexei Urmanov, coach of the winner, Mikhail Shadorov, put it diplomatically. Gumennik skated his program practically flawlessly, cleanly. I watched from afar. It's always very difficult and painful to talk about over and under rotations, especially when it concerns your athletes or Russian athletes. I don't know the printout. I haven't seen it yet. Overall, I thought everything was executed very well and with dignity. Whether, excuse me, they took away or didn't take away the medal is probably not for me to judge. And Petr himself, who has repeatedly demonstrated his wisdom in answering tricky questions at these Olympics, responded this way. Was it expected that the judges reduced my technical score so much during the review? Do you understand why? I know they reduced it there. But yes, I certainly wasn't looking at the Russian competitions or the St. Petersburg ones, where I could have scored 220 points in the free skate. I was aiming for Beijing, but I still got a little less here. But that didn't upset me. After all, my primary goal was to nail all my elements. Russian figure skater Petr Gumennik's first coach, Tatyana Yurisheva, commented on his performance. Everything was counting on Ilya Malinin. Petya had the most quads. The guy skated everything cleanly. Absolutely. I have no complaints about him. I think he's a smart skater. Yes, they finish him off with the short program. The free skate is unclear. I don't understand the judging. I think he's 100% third. We weren't fighting for placements. I told him that. I told him, your goal is to skate cleanly. For yourself, so you can go in with your head held high. That's it. Let them sort it out. Of course, after Gumennik's performance, I was happy. When I look at what's going on with the scores, they're knocking down triples, doubles, giving him higher marks than Petya. The judging is incomprehensible. Gumennik skated his best program. He skated absolutely calmly. Sixth place is disappointing. Because I was planning for him to be in the podium. But you see, if it had been the short program, it all started with the music. They started tearing Gumennik's psyche apart. But Petya pulled himself together and did everything, Yurisheva said. Polina Krudakina. The final of the free skate in Milan was the most unpredictable thing to happen at the Olympics in men's skating this century. But the main emotion that remains after it is not joy, but disappointment. At these games, I felt bad for two people, Ilya Malinin and Petr Gumennik. The former was not himself from the start of his program. A guy with no nerves suddenly found them at the most inopportune moment. Never before had we seen so many mistakes from Malinin. A butterfly, a fall from a butterfly. With each new mistake, Ilya became more and more frightening to watch because he understood perfectly well that his reserves were dwindling after the short program. The second one had a medal stolen from him at the games. At the very least, a bronze, but if he had played a few more international tournaments this season, perhaps even a gold. Two different forms of injustice, one from the judges and one from real life. One did practically everything, but had almost no control over it. The other gave it away with his own hands. It's unclear which is worse. Of course, Malinin will at least keep the gold from the team event. Tatyana Tarasova, on the broadcast, decided that it was the two performances there that exhausted his reserves. Perhaps so, although even in those performances, Ilya looked unusually unsure. If you try to quantify it, Petr skated at 90% of his potential, taking into account two lost rotations in his combinations and a muddled presentation in the short program. But then how much did everyone else fall short of their maximum? At this Olympics, I haven't felt a single moment of shame for Gumennik. I'm ashamed of the judges. For Italy's Tiziana Morandi, who was giving Gumennik unfair credit even in the short program. In total, for the two programs, she gave compatriot Daniel Grassl 23 points more than her fellow judges. She gave Petr 13.09 points less. There wasn't a single skater whom the Italian judged more harshly than Gumennik. Even Yuma Kageyama, who ruined his free program, was, according to Morandi, 9 points better than Petr. I'm ashamed of Canada's Liana Karin, who was with her. In her scorecard, Gumennik, with 5 quads, finished worse than Chaiying Huan, with 1. It's shameful that the person with the second most difficult program of the day, even after it was mercilessly cut after the repeats, received a paltry 7 points in bonus points for elements. Malinin, with his disastrous performance, incidentally, received 9. It's shameful that Gumennik, with a flawless performance, lost in components to the collapsed Malinin and Kageyama and Imes. Gumennik's 6th place seems an unimpressive result, unless you consider that only Evgeny Plashenko in Vancouver 2010 has achieved a higher result in recent years, and that Olympics were held in incomparably more favorable conditions for Russia. Perhaps such an excuse at the Games, where figure skating is scheduled alongside far more objective sports, seems naive. In skiing, the stopwatch doesn't malfunction just because you have a low rating. In bobsled, the color of your passport cover or the coach standing behind you isn't evaluated. Years of accumulated fatigue in other federations with the dominance of Russian figure skaters has ricocheted onto Gumennik. It's quite possible the same awaits Adelia Petrosyan, especially since the medal queue in women's skating has become even longer. But Petro's selection for the Olympics was perhaps one of the federation's best decisions in recent years. While the judges likely wouldn't have been moved even by the sight of Stefan Lambiel's second coming under the neutral athlete flag, the spectators certainly saw a presentation of our men's skating that makes one proud. We saw that evening, with Milan, how disruptive a debut Olympics can be. Yes, the expectations for him were much higher, but he didn't have to live for a year with the burden of justifying advances for a single quota spot at the Games, knowing that any injury would deprive not only him but the entire team of the Olympics. Russia had no right to substitute. Gumennik viewed everything that happened to him at the Games with a healthy dose of self-irony. He viewed the problems with his music, which was rejected before his flight to Milan, due to a lack of copyright approval. He viewed the news that some skaters were uncomfortable skating next to him. He viewed the fact that he couldn't even walk with the other athletes at the opening ceremony. Amid all this chaos, Petr looked so dignified, as if he had not just a couple of challenger titles and one senior international Grand Prix under his belt, but a long career and vast experience. And he certainly looked far more worthy than those who were evaluating him.